Hello, hello, hello. This is Corey Thompson from Above Board TV. Did you just remember to record?
I didn't hit the button in time. So let's start this.
Ah,
Let's start it again, but we are recording. Here,
all right.
here we go. Three, two,
This
one,
one's on you.
go.
Hello, hello, hello. Once again, this is Corey Thompson from Above Board TV, Dice Tower Dish, and various other nerdity.
And this is the Podfather of Gaming, Stephen Bonacore. You are listening to Board Games Insider, episode 336, and we're recording this on September 20th, 2024. Board Games Insider is proud to be powered by Board Game Geek. Corey, my friend, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. I am in the house by Napa Valley. And we have a big group that's descended on the house. We're going to have about 20 people from the influencer arena, mostly from the LA area. We've got the brothers Murph, Crystal Dax, Amanda Panda, Benita Cower, Grant Lyon, Shay Parker, even Dave Luza is here from Germany. So we've got quite a group.
All of these influencers, all of these
So
friends of mine, and I'm still not invited out to be part of these groups. Okay, all right. I'm
You're
just
you're gonna see them. You're gonna see them next week because they're all. A lot of them are going to World Series of Board Gaming.
That's right, which we'll talk about in a minute.
But basically, we're having a good time playing games and trying not to work. I'm getting ready for a trip to Iceland next week. I'm leaving on Tuesday,
Nice.
and that's the beginning of my whole trip around Essen. So it's going to be Iceland, and then Finland, and then I'm going to end up in Essen. So it's going to be fantastic.
Well, that's
Really looking
really
forward
cool.
to it.
Is this some new filming in Iceland you guys are going to be doing?
No, I'm going to Iceland. We filmed in Iceland last year,
Right.
but I'm going just as a visit to visit friends and things like that. But Above Board is going to Essen.
Very
So
cool.
if anybody wants a meeting with the Above Board team, with myself and Travis Oates, we're the two founders, just let us know. Drop us a line, Corey at aboveboardtv.com, and we'll try to make something happen.
That's cool. I really wish I was going, as I mentioned previously. Essen, first year in like 15 years, minus those COVID years. I'm not going because of my niece's wedding. I can't believe she would do that to me and schedule. She would not consult with me. So over here at
That's
the
really
Podfather
cool.
of Gaming, I am on board the lovely Liberty of the Seas on BGG at Sea, a cruise that started in New Jersey and went up the coast, and went to Boston and Portland, Maine, and then three Canada ports: Sydney, Halifax, St. John. Having a great time, a lot of great gaming, getting in, introducing people to some of the new games out of Gen Con this year, like Sears Catalog, Xylatar, The Gang. Those games I've been playing so much, just showing people, and they've been loving it. Played a lot of Thunder Road Vendetta. Everyone wants to play with me for some reason because I love it so much, I guess. And then immediately we land tomorrow back in New Jersey on Saturday the 21st. I hop on a plane and I fly out to Vegas for the World Series of Board Gaming, where the moment I hit the Horseshoe Hotel,
Yeah.
literally the moment I hit there, I'm playing in a War Game Invitational. So I'm playing in a War of the Ring tournament. It's not part of the rings. I can't become the world champion or anything, but they set up a couple of war games that would be adjacent to the World Series, which is kind of cool. And I got to play two games of War of the Ring while on board, kind of practicing a little bit, just having fun, of course, as well. So that was having a great time. And for those, and this is going to drop somewhere in the middle of the World Series. If you end up hearing it, hey, show up there if you're a local in Vegas. That'd be great to see you. But now we got a bunch of news stories, so let's get over to the event deck. All right, so the first story here is out of
All right.
gizmodo.com, and it's the CEO of Hasbro. He's saying that D&D is adopting AI. It's going to happen. It is, his words, inevitable. Corey, did you kind of read through this a little bit, and did you get a feel for where his stance is on where AI will fit in?
I mean, it sounds like he's talking about using AI for all sorts of things, including art, not limited to, but including.
Okay.
Um, he's focusing more on development and creating. Some of the notable quotes inside development, we've already been using AI. It's mostly machine learning based AI or proprietary AI as opposed to ChatGPT. We will deploy it significantly and liberally internally as both a knowledge worker aid and as a development kit.
Wow.
So he also says, I'm probably more excited though about the playful elements of AI. If you look at a typical D&D player, I play with probably 30 or 40 people regularly, there's not a single person who doesn't use AI somehow for either campaign development, character development, or story ideas.
And that's
That's
where
a
we
clear signal that we need to be embracing it. We
right.
need to do it carefully.
And that's exactly what you and I have been talking about in the past on where AI is simply going to be helpful in for the players to create worlds and for pieces of the campaign to come out, of
Yeah.
something that has learned from 50 years of stuff that's out there. So everybody he plays with, and he plays with a lot of people apparently, he says 30 or 40 people, and they're all using AI in one regard or another. I didn't see him touch upon artwork in here, but I'm sure that it's part of their general
He
idea.
didn't he didn't mention it specifically. It should be noted that last year Wizards of the Coast updated its policies for D&D and Magic to prohibit generative AI, but artwork of that nature has slipped through in the year since they made that promise.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. So continuing with the large companies, we have Embracer Group. They've received early payment for the sale of their Saber assets. 4A Games and Zen Studios will remain within the Embracer Group, but they had announced a while ago that they had sold quite a few of the properties in the e-gaming space, including Saber. And they've now gotten the cash
Yeah.
that they were expecting to get from this in an early payment. This bodes well, of course, for Asmodee, which is still part of Embracer, and they're going to be able to pay off some of that debt that Asmodee has now on its books as they move toward, in about 6 months, becoming a sole completely independent company from anybody else, including from Embracer.
I find it interesting there is actually another big e-games that they sold, which was group that owns Borderlands. They sold that part of Embracer around the same time, and I don't see any mention of it
Mm-hmm.
in the press release.
Okay. So there's also some big changes going on at CMoN. Again, we're with some of the bigger companies we're talking about
This
right
one I
here.
found really interesting. Um, so CMoN has been well, there's two big stories from
Yep.
CMoN. The first is that because CMoN is on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, they have a lot of things that they have to go public with. So they have publicly entered into a non-binding memorandum of understanding with the intent to sell some of the company's intellectual property for $12 million. So they are selling some IP, some title, some world that I assume is popular and they've been working with for a while for 12 million. I can only imagine it's something big like Zombicide or but there's no statement here about what property it is
Right.
that they have agreed to
Right.
sell.
And
But
as
it's worth
you
12 million.
Yeah, as you said specifically, that's a fairly big number, so it can't be something too small. 12 million is about on average about one third or so, or one third to almost a half, maybe let's call it 40% of their annual profit revenue. Apologies on that. So it's a big chunk of money that they'll be getting in on this. They've got a second announcement here, Corey, don't they?
Yeah,
Corey.
they do. The second one is that yes, Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I know we
The
have a bit
the
of a
second
delay here. I
announce,
know that. Go ahead.
I blame your boat.
Yes, the boat is causing this problem. I guarantee it.
So David Preti has been the CEO of CMoN for a really long time now, since 2019, so almost 6 years. And he announced that he will be resigning effective in March 2025. So Preti's been doing really well with CMoN, has been with the company for a super long time. So we'll see. There's big changes happening over at Seon. I hope they're for the better and
Yeah.
things are going okay. But losing a COO and selling off some IPs, you got to wonder what's going on over there.
So he's going to have he's also been the director of an executive director at the company. That role is going to change immediately to a non-executive director, for which he has a 3-year contract. So he's going to stay on in some non-executive role. By the way, you said CEO. He's the COO of the company, slightly different. And it is interesting because he's one of the people that before CMoN was even as big a company as it is today, he was part of this company. So that's a
Yeah,
significant internal change for CMoN. And as you said, they've got to disclose these types of things because they are a publicly traded company on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Another interesting big company story, we're certainly sticking here with a lot of the big company stories, is that Hasbro is considering a move from its current headquarters in Rhode Island, where it's been since its founding in 1923, to the Boston area. The company
yeah.
has been scouting locations in the Boston area for 250,000-ish square feet of office space, according to the report. This is all coming on ICV2, both of these stories. The statement from the company said that it is exploring options for its global headquarters. So what could this mean? One of the things that ICV2 is postulating is that they need to be near a more tech focused community. So they're staying in the Northeast, but Boston is known for having a lot of tech focused companies there. Not quite as much, of course, as Silicon Valley and that part of the West Coast. But from here, Hasbro's CEO Chris Cox can drive more of the digital games and all of the stuff we just talked about in
Mm,
the AI space potentially, because they have some proprietary AI that they work with. So this is interesting news within Hasbro.
very cool, very cool.
So the next one is
And
about a
then
good friend of ours. Go for it.
yeah, the Dice Tower announced last week that Roy Cannaday is going to be leaving the Dice Tower. Roy Cannaday, of course, has their longtime editor. He's a personality. He's been on top tens, and he's the designer of last year's Last Light with Gray Fox Games.
Sure.
So Roy is leaving after the success of Last Light to open opportunities. This comes from Board Game Wire, and it's got a lovely little review of things that Roy has done. So we wish Roy absolutely the best of luck
Yeah,
in wherever he ends up, and I'm sure he'll land on his feet.
absolutely. It came as a shock, I think, to quite a few of us. Roy's a good
Yeah.
guy. I have gamed with Roy at my house even because he lives in the Homestead area right near the Dice Tower headquarters. So he's driven up and we've played some War of the Ring and Dune War for Arrakis and things like that. We've got similar style in gaming there. So yeah, really wish him the best. I hope everything works out because I know that he's got his own channel that he's working on a little bit, and he has another business that he works on. He's a real hustler. He has a number of different like businesses.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's been really strong in the anime community for a
that's
long
exactly
time, and
right.
he's got a couple businesses working in that realm.
Yep, yep. So good luck, Roy. Hey, keep us posted on where things go for you, of course. So from Board Game Wire, we had some very interesting news. And this is Leader Games, the maker of Root and Arcs and a bunch of other 4-letter word games, which is I always love that they keep all their games 4 letters. So I mean, they might run out. They might be using something that starts with an F at some point. I don't know. They're in talks for video games based on one of its IPs, as well as potentially comics. So now this is not like taking Root, for instance, and making it an adaptation on, on Board Game Arena or an app on Steam. No, this is taking a world that they have and bringing it into comics or bringing it into a video game world. Corey, what? And there's not much
Yeah.
here about what it could be. This comes from Board Game Wire, our good friends over there.
Well, they're
What do you
very
think?
specifically not saying which IP it
I
is.
know.
I think it's got to be Root. I think Root
Yeah,
is still their most popular, and it has a really interesting world. And there's a million different expansions for Root that add new characters and, cute, aggressive, warlike animals. What's not to love?
what's not to love about cute, aggressive, warlike animals? So, I have to admit, I have never played Root, and that was because it's always been one of those games that are really hard to get through the learning curve. So I never said, you know what? Let me go do this now. So you're a Root player, or you've at least played Root a bunch of times. Is that
Oh
correct?
yeah, oh yeah. Root is a fantastic asymmetric area control game. You take one of the many, many factions, and each faction plays its game very differently. One of them is a card management system. One of them is a forward action selection, moving armies around. There's lots of different methods to the madness.
Really sounds like it's
It's
something I would
not
like.
as asymmetric as their first title, Vast. Vast was crazy. Every player was playing a completely different game.
Right,
Root really centers around an aerial board, but each faction has its own cool ways of doing things.
right, right.
So
So,
fantastic game.
so Corey, let's play a little game here. Let's play a prediction game. So, since you know the game so much better than I, what do you think if they were going to be bringing this into an e-game world? Prediction, MMO or some other just like takeoff, like a what do you call those old school games where like the God games where you have a faction and you got to build this, and you got to build this, and then you go out and
Yeah.
fight. What do you think it would be? What kind of game?
I I kind of think it'll stay sort of true to the area control battling nature. So I think it'll be some sort of a boss battle or area
Boss battle.
control
Okay.
game.
Cool, cool, cool. I like it. Well, we're going to see about that. I'm definitely looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing what comes out of that. And now we're done for the week's news. Let's get over to strategy and tactics. All right, so first one is going to include a little rant by Bonacor here, but let's be cool. Be cool about it first. So Houston Taylor, who's at Houston 890, he made a comment on something by Torben, a question that we answered from Torben, who's at Nazar. The question that we had answered, it was that Torben postulated here, that proposed. He said, how do you feel about sustainable products and designs in board games? Who is responsible for this? The publishers, designs, and factories. So we answered that question, and I don't remember when, but we did. And Houston then said, I'm glad they chose your question, but I'm sad to hear them pass the buck. So now you know where my rant is going to come onto other industries. Excessive plastic in the hobby gaming industry is no small thing, in my opinion. So I'll go first, Corey, and it's a small rant. I'm not going to trash you,
Sure, sure.
Houston, but we didn't pass the buck. That's not what we did. We are very, very, very into this issue without a doubt. What we said was, and what I certainly believe, is that we can all do better. We did say that there's a demand for plastics. So that's driving a lot of what we see in the industry. And there's no way around making these minis, right, without doing it in plastics at the moment. We're going to talk about something very interesting in a second. So, and I also will go, and we also talked about the fact that we are a microcosm of a microcosm. I mean, that's how small it is because we don't create disposable products. Sure, the shrink wrap, disposable. Okay, sure. We can do things that may even be biodegradable shrink wrap, or don't use shrink wrap, put those little corners on the boxes. All that is possible. But I also consulted with a doctor of sustainability. Yes, a good friend of both Corey and ours, Dr. Liz. I don't know. They want their last names done. Do you know what I'm talking about? Dr. Liz. She's a
Oh,
doctor,
absolutely.
yeah, of sustainability. And she said, Sure, there's always things we can do, but really everything I just said, you can't, you look at every other product. Here's my iPhone right here. You know how much plastic is in this iPhone? And this is in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it goes away. These things, that's just one thing. Oh, look at this power cord. It's all plastic. So much stuff that we use in our lives. So pointing the finger and saying, "Oh, we're a problem," is just not the right way of looking at it. So that's my little bit of a rant on this. Corey, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, I do think that the gaming industry is doing what they can. There's a lot
Yeah.
of companies that are moving to less plastic, no plastic in their
Yep.
products.
Yep.
The one that I really liked is it was the green project set from Amigo, where they were actually having paper wrapped cards, which I prefer and work really well. It's really hard to open shrink wrap cards, and
I hate shrink
no
wrap
shrink on
cards.
the box. No shrink on the box. There's
Yeah.
just stickers on the side.
Yep.
And there's even groups that are doing biodegradable plastics. I do agree that the one spot where we don't have it yet is minis, because
Right.
for miniatures, it's always going to be the quality of the miniature over the manufacturing process. We
Hmm.
could go to more cardboard cuts. We could go to different materials while making the minis, but unfortunately, those newer biodegradable materials just aren't making the same quality of mini as the old ones. And
Right.
yeah, we don't really have a disposable product, a one-use product. We theoretically, you buy a game, you keep it forever.
Right. I mean, how
So I
often
think
do you
we're doing
get rid of a game? How often do you get rid of a game? It sits there forever. Occasionally, it does end up in just in trash, but you end up selling it, you end up giving it away, or you end up keeping it for basically your entire gaming career. So I'm not passing the buck. We can all do a little bit here. We just have to think about what our impact is versus other impact. And that brings us directly to another question. These questions literally came in within days of each other in the thread that we post on the Guild and Board Game Geek. When this is a great one, and it talks about a product called Rewood. And this is a question
Yeah.
from Ewan Lemons from Belgium. He's at E1 Prime. What are your thoughts on the potential future of Rewood, the material used by Czech Games Editions in Kutna Hora, as an alternative to plastic miniatures? Personally, I found the components in this game to be a bit too small to get a real sense of the material. Do you happen to know if Rewood could be used for real miniatures, or if there are any limitations associated with this manufacturing process? Does it cost more than plastic? Are there limitations on size or precision? So I did not know what Rewood was. Did you? Did you ever hear of this
Yeah.
before?
Oh,
Oh,
I
you did.
did.
Oh, look at that.
Of
So
course. I did
I
lots of
looked
news
it up
articles
though.
on Rewood
Yes, and
when it
I
was
looked it up.
announced before it came out.
Go ahead. You talk a little bit about it, and then I got an article that came from CGE's
Yeah.
website. So talk a little bit about what you know about Rewood.
So Rewood is a way to take wood and binders and make a type of granular plastic to be made into miniatures or little figures. And the first game that used Rewood was Kutna Hora, City of Silver.
Hmm.
And I agree, the pieces are very small. What's nice is you can see detail on them. I think the reason that they're small is you made a full-size miniature. At this point in the technology, it wouldn't have the resolution
Yes.
of a true plastic miniature. Also, I bet you anything, there's a special way to mold Rewood that I don't think you could just take the wood material and put it in the standard plastics
Right.
molds
Right.
and process and get a real product.
Right.
So CGE has Rewood. They're going to be proprietary for it for a little bit. They're going to advertise that they have Rewood. They are not making a lot of big miniatures games.
Right.
So they probably don't have in-house or available the machines to make large miniatures.
Right.
But I do like their little ones. What's
Yep.
also catching up with them really quickly is the laser cutting on wood is really making leaps and bounds. So you're seeing really intricate, made of wood, small minis.
Right.
I personally don't see Rewood making it into the standard plastics industry with the big players for miniatures games, things like that for quite a long time.
Right.
And So through casual conversation, Rewood is a little more expensive than plastic, but it's something that is doable.
Right. So one of the things
So
to mention here about Rewood is made from 100% recycled materials, and then it itself, once it's made into a shape, whatever that shape is, a cube
yeah,
or a kind of a mini, a house or whatever, it then can also be recycled. So this is a great idea, as a benefit. Now, I don't think Corey nor I know anything about the cost of this versus, just using wood, which is also recyclable. Um, it
just casual conversation. That's all.
right. But this does give you certain amount of detail, but not what a gamer would want in a full miniature. I see the pieces on the screen that from Kutnahora. They look nice, but they would not scale at this point to work for an actual miniature. And if you think about it, so how are plastic miniatures made? It's called injection molding, right? They create this big block of steel that has a cutout on the inside, and then they got tubes that inject the plastic in liquid form. And then when they open it up, the minis fall out, cool them down. You got miniatures. Here, they're probably pressing this, right? That's the only thing we can think of because it's not liquids. They're using only hard substances, wood waste, a binding material. Also, it's also a solid, right? The wood waste is solid. The binding material is solid. And Rewood granulate, which I'm not sure what that is, but there's different colors that's all pushed together to create something with some amount of detail. Something from no
Yeah.
detail like a cube,
And I
something like
do
these little
think
guys that I
their
see in Kutnahora.
goal is to get into an injection molding plastic process.
Yeah.
Just the fact that they make it with plastic granules.
Hmm.
Yeah. So in the normal injection molding process, plastic's delivered in little discs or little granules, and you move it around like that, and then you heat it up to melt it and you inject it into the molds. So the fact that they're starting with a granulate is this kind of hidden little innuendo that they want to go into true injection molding.
Right. Right. Let's take another one here from Ewan Lemons. And he asks, this is more of a remark than a question regarding episode 294's discussion on the Designers Union. While I applaud Ignacy for his openness and honesty as a board game publisher, it would be incorrect to assume that this is the case for the entire industry. As it's demonstrated in a story covered by the Dice Tower now, there are always bad actors. So what he's doing, he's commenting on we have a new union, at least union is not the right word. It's a trade association for designers set up by Jeff Engelstein and a bunch of other notable designers that can represent you, can help you as a new designer or as a seasoned designer with contracts. They will review a contract if you think it's got something really weird. So Ewan, we're not saying, and the trade association is not saying there are, most people are bad actors or they're just bad actors we need to deal with. They're just saying like, hey, these are good practices in a contract for a publisher to have, and these are less so. And if you need somebody to review things to say, hey, go back and ask the publisher to remove this, this is really not a fair clause. I'm not trying to abuse you. This is not as fair as others. There's a lot of gray areas in contracts.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get to a state where everybody has the same amount of knowledge and has a legal background, right? So Jeff and company, they've vetted things with lawyers and themselves as usually seasoned designers. So it's just a step in that direction. And it is true that 99% of the industry is as honest as can be. There's always a bad actor here and there.
Yeah, and I appreciate the shout out. Dice Tower Now is the news podcast that I did for several years, and episode 716 to 720 was a series about
Oh,
one board game designer's horror story trying to get their first game published. It was an anonymous report from real designer, actually pretty famous designer, and everything went wrong. But I totally believe in this new designers union. It is the Tabletop Game Designers Association, TTGDA. Their website is just a fount of good, useful information. I think
Yep.
for designers and people working in the industry, this is really worth joining just for the shared resources. There's a lot
Sure.
of designers out there, especially new ones, who just don't know the ins and outs and what to look for. And this is a great meeting place for everybody to kind of look out for each other's back.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's all right. Tabletop designers. Do we know the exact website we can actually shout out here?
Yes,
Tabletop
it is the
Game
Tabletop Game
Designers
Design Association.
A.org.
And the website is ttgda.org.
Very good. Yep. Very, very good organization. Any designer should be out there looking at that if they, or even aspiring designer. Let's take one more from someone who calls himself just I, the letter I, at Insider Trading on the Geek. Besides going to board game conventions, are there any other ways designers can network with publishers, either virtually or in person? I'm looking to pitch games to publishers, but would like to have an in besides just submitting games to web submission forms. Thanks in advance. Love the show. This is one of those really tough questions. How do you get yourself published? I mean, just throwing things
Yeah,
onto a form is difficult, right? I mean, and you don't have that high touch. Recently, a little anecdote. Scott Brady, right? He's now a noted designer. Boop is his big game, but he keeps getting games and games published.
yeah.
He and his wife, Nicole Brady, who's the president of Gamma, they credit simply going to conventions, getting known, because they had a website, they still have it, called SAHM, SAHM Reviews, Stay at Home Mom Reviews. And they would do reviews of board games, right? You'd give them a game, they do a review of it, they post it
Yeah.
on there. Hopefully you get some extra publicity just for giving them a game. You could run a contest on their site. They're just great people. And they specifically quote say that them going to conventions, getting to know people like me and other publishers were the ways that they
But
excelled in
you're
the industry.
retired.
Not me. Now I'm not. Now I'm a nobody. But it's the way that they have been able to excel in the
Yeah.
industry. So, insider trading. I have to submit to you that really doing things with the publishers definitely puts that foot in the door, that you then get to know them and they'll take you more seriously, sort of,
And
right?
that's exactly the answer that I give as well. Is we are a small industry. We're a face-to-face or online industry. We all know each other to a certain extent. So if you just show up and be present, and the really easy way to do that is through prototyping events like Protospiel,
Yes,
going to conventions and showing off your prototype. There are big designers there for great advice, and there's publishers there looking for interesting things. And you just make friends within the design and publishing side of board games. And later, if you submit something, someone might go, "Oh, I remember this guy," or "I remember this game," or "This was kind of
exactly.
cool." So we have a very much a friendly talk to people sort of industry in that
Right.
regard.
So that's a great thing that you mentioned that I had forgotten to say, right? The proto spiel type events, right? These conventions or gatherings of designers that go to test their games. Publishers show up sometimes too. You'll get to get known not only in the design community, but potentially with
Yeah,
publishers there too. So all of that together makes a great
almost any
way of doing it.
convention has a
Yep.
prototyping.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I think that's enough for now. And in this segment, let's
Um,
get over to play testing. All right, Corey, last week I asked the question because, you're incapable of using computers, as we know. And the
Totally
question,
incapable.
the question that I asked was, do you now, or have you ever played a true miniatures game, like one from Games Workshop, such as Warhammer 40K, or possibly a historical miniatures game, like one set in the Napoleonic era? This does not include games with miniatures in them, so it must be a true miniatures games. Which ones do you or did you enjoy the experience? And tell us about this. And if not, why not? And finally, if given the opportunity, someone was going to bring a fully painted army, put out the terrain, explain the game, would you? play a true miniatures game? Would it be of interest to you or not? Corey, we got a number of answers to this, including people posting some
We
really nice
had a whole
forward.
lot.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I think it's about 50-50 split with people who have played miniatures games and people who haven't, so among our audience, which is really interesting. But there's a very strong response of, yeah, I'd give it a shot. I'd give it a play.
Yeah. So Jim Brown,
So I think that's great.
right? Jim Brown said, my wife and I enjoy painting minis for Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, but we don't play the games much. Interesting, right? I very much enjoy skirmish
Paul
games.
Owen listed some really neat ones.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
Paul Owen listed De Bellis Antiquitas quick play wargame rules. Uh, it said it's a very small footprint ancient miniatures game. I haven't heard of this one, but that's one of the neat things about miniatures games as a genre is there's a lot of little unknown ones that get a fan following and people really enjoy.
Um, we have Josh Wasser, the original Mage Knight and Mage Knight Dungeons collectible miniatures games. It's been 22 to 24 years, and I still have them. When my son was 4 or 5 years old, he'd have giant army battles with them, so they served me well multiple times. We even broke out a couple games of Dungeon this year. So, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of people shouting out some obscure things here. But there's some people just saying never had the opportunity and probably not going to happen in my life. So it's right there, like on that edge of like, no and yes.
So interesting ones keep getting brought up because there is a little resurgence in miniatures games crossing over to the board game market. So Paul Marchbank says, I've never played a true miniatures game because I don't love heavy conflict in gaming. I did just hear, however, that there's going to be a new co-op game mode for Kill Team, which has me tempted. I do like painted minis. I've been enjoying and slowly painting the minis from Marvel United. We've got a lot of shout outs to not specifically Marvel United, but there's a Marvel miniatures game that's become popular. Shatterpoint is a Star Wars miniatures game that's becoming popular. Legion. Shout outs to those crossover titles.
Very, very cool. So, Corey, the question for this week that goes out to our listeners, you put that one up there finally. So why don't you go tell us what
I've
it
added
is?
almost all the
Yeah,
questions.
I know I'm teasing you. Thank you for all of your hard work. Unlike that other guy. No, I'm
I
kidding.
know.
I'm kidding.
That
I'm kidding.
Bonacor guy's the worst.
Oh, he's the worst. So
He's
what?
the worst.
So what's the question you have?
So my question is, the group that we play with is just as important as the game we play. Have you ever played a game that was absolutely terrible, but you loved it just because of the group you were in? And feel free to answer it the other way around as well. A fantastic game that you just couldn't play because of the group.
So I mean, I had a problem trying to come up with that. I think it's a great question, and I know that the answer that I haven't answered. So the closest I can come to, but I love the game too. So I always bring up Betrayal at House on the Hill, the original one, right? The first edition. There was so
It is a
many
broken
broken
game, but it's
scenarios, but it's so much fun. So but I love the game. So
it's
I can't
true.
say it's a bad game, but people say it is. So that could be the only answer that I come up with. Is there something specific that's you know about that you have played that's broken
Now, there's a whole bunch of games that
or
are
bad?
generally regarded as games that are a little tricky or ugly or broken, and just the group could have such fun with it. Um, the one that comes to my mind is actually Magical Athlete. Magical Athlete is an insanely broken game. It's everything is overpowered. There's no fairness in it whatsoever. It is so goofy that with the right group of people, you just have a ridiculously fun time seeing how insanely broken you can bring the game. A lot of games by the designer Carl Chudek have these broken elements in it that if you have the right group of people, you could just have a fun time with I play this, I play this. Well, now I play the nuclear bomb and
Yeah.
everybody dies. Is
Magical
famously
Athlete.
an
Yeah.
innovation.
Magical Athlete is a really good example of a game that I'm just gonna say it's not a great design, but it's stupidly fun, right? That's sort of the thing about that game.
Yeah.
It just works as a fun experience with the right group of players. If you're playing with like heavy Euro players and then they don't want any silly little fun element, they just want a serious puzzle solving, maybe not. But yeah, I've played Magical Athlete and I've had a lot of fun, even though it's like bizarre types of mechanics right there. So I have just created a
Absolutely.
thread on Board Game Geek in our guild. So please go to the guild on Board Game Geek and find the play testing thread for this episode's question and post your
You're so
answer.
talented.
I am. I am the man here, Corey. You should recognize that. You don't. You don't appreciate my authority. In the meantime, let's get over to final scoring. Thank you all so much for listening and help us spread the word about this podcast by telling your friends to download Board Games Insider wherever they like to get their podcasts or watch Board Games Insider on the Podfather of Gaming YouTube channel. If you want to be part of this podcast, you can. Go over to the guild on Board Game Geek first, become a member. And if you're not, and then ask us questions for strategy and tactics and answer our question to you from the play testing segment in those threads. Simply post. It's really easy. I promise. Just do it. Check out the websites, which are
Even Bonacor can do
boardgamesinsider.com.
it.
Yes. Portalgamesus.com, podfathergaming.com, dicetowerdish.com, playtozgames.com, and aboveboardtv.com. On social media. You can interact with us on all of the platforms. And essentially, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, just by using the @ tag with our name at Board Games Insider, at Portal Games US, at Podfather Gaming, at Play to Z Games, at Dice Tower Dish, at Above Board TV. Come and talk directly to us there. I'll especially call out the excellent YouTube channels that we both have here, or both of us, as well as Ignacy, Portal Games Studio, the Podfather of Gaming, and Above Board TV. And we'd love to see you in person at an upcoming convention, besides, of course,
Yeah.
the World Series of Board Gaming, which will mostly be over by the time you hear this. But also, Corey, what other things? You're going to be in Essen first.
I'm going to be an Essen with Above Board.
That's going to be
So if
great.
you want to come say hi to myself and Travis and Leaf, we're all going to be there. And then, oh man, I'm going to be at BGG Con in
Yes.
Dallas. I'm going to
So
be at
we'll,
PAX Unplugged
yep,
in
both.
Philadelphia.
That's great.
And I
So
can't
we'll see
think farther
everybody at
ahead
those
than
two.
that.
I'm sorry. Say again.
I can't think farther ahead than
No.
that.
Well, that's the end of the year, right? So yeah, both be at BGG Con. We're both going to be at PAX. So definitely look us up if you're going to be there. Meanwhile, Board Games Insider, professionally edited by Joshua Bowman from Tabletop Submarine Podcast. If you want him to edit your podcast, reach out to him at tabletopsubmarine@gmail.com. And that great voice you hear doing the intro, the outro, the in-between segments is that of Ray Greenlee. He can be contacted to do your voiceover work at raygreenleevoiceover.com. Corey, that brings us to the end of another amazing episode. Anything you want to say to our listeners right here at the
Uh,
end?
yeah, I just want to point out a fun little Facebook thread that's going on the Podfather of Gaming group, where someone, Mr. Bonacore, has asked who is the current king of board gaming.
I did
And
not ask the question.
I just want to point out, well, I give you credit because it's your Facebook group. This was started by Steve Weeks.
Yes, it was.
And
He's a
and I just
character.
want to note who's winning as the current king of board gaming.
Who would that be?
That's me. There's a lot of names being thrown around, but I'm getting the most votes right now, so I just want to point that out.
I
If
think
you
that
need advice on board gaming, Stephen, you'll get better if you've been in the industry a little longer. But
I
I'm certainly happy to show you around, give you a little advice.
yeah, Steve Weeks is a character. I've known him for many years. He put the question up there as a joke, and he said, "Who's the current king?" And he says, is it Tom Vassell? Is it Stephen Bonnick? Or is it Scott Alden? You know, the owner of Board Game Geek."
And the write-in candidate wins it.
Oh, you probably started paying people off. I don't know what you were doing. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.
See you later, everyone.